Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Vince Boddicker with Farmers Trading Company, and we've seen kind of some mixed trade in both grain and livestock futures this morning. In fact, grains, Vince, have kind of been on both sides of steady here in corn, wheat, and soybeans with really not a lot of conviction. Do you think this big rally that we've had is done?
I think you could be pretty close. Corn market, we did close above in July, that 248.5 level, which was my 20 period moving average. But you've got some pretty thick stuff up here in this 253 to 250, or excuse me, 453 to 458 level that we really need to get through. And if we can't, would think you're going to get a pullback. And again, nice run in here, but I'm just not sure there's enough fundamental or technical news to keep it running at the pace it is.
Yeah. So the wheat market felt like it did have fundamental news pushing it with weather and maybe some crop concerns. But, was the corn and soybean rally, was that all short covering, do you think?
That's my guess, and I haven't looked at open interest that close, but you got to believe it was, especially that soybean situation. You looked last week, we were nearly record short as of a week ago yesterday. In here, when we get from the Commitment of Traders report on Friday. And again, I'm just not sure there's a lot of new buying or why people would want to do that at this point in time.
And we actually have kind of gotten up to the top end of the trading ranges. So we haven't really, with the exception of wheat, maybe made any big new highs or anything like that. We're just back above some moving averages.
Right, right. And beans, just from a technical standpoint, could they have 20 to 40 cents to go? Yet they could, but I think if they're going to, they need to do it fairly quickly. And this whole thing, whether it's livestock or greens, probably gets in that sideways motion till mid to late May, and then maybe we make some changes.
Yeah. So some of the other things that we may be talking about in the market, first of all, Brazil, it looks like they're going into their dry season for the second crop corn, and Argentina has had some problems with their corn crops. Do you think that is giving a little bit of support to that corn market?
I think the Argentine thing is in there, and I think both countries, especially Argentina, has had some disease problems that's helped us. So you got a little fundamentals, but still worldwide, the stocks are pretty good, and I think it has to get worse than it is before they get too excited about it.
Yeah, because we have certainly a big discrepancy between USDA and CONAB and other private agencies in terms of those production numbers down in South America, don't we?
We do. You're looking at 6, 7, 8 million metric tons, and not that that's devastating, but if you came in, I think it would definitely put a different tone on the market if USDA followed those numbers.
Absolutely. So, what's your take on weather right now? We have a big system that's supposed to be moving into the Midwest, maybe some heavy rains over in parts of the Eastern Corn Belt. Will that get the market's attention, do you think?
I think it's too early for that yet, Michelle. The trade's going to see what did we get for rains, what does the weather forecast look like. It seemed like once this system got through here by mid next week, we're going to dry out and warm up pretty good, which wouldn't take long to get the planters going at that point. And we're still plenty early in this season. And right now, I'm not sure you got the right attitude or the right people in the market to get them excited about uh, too much planting, too much wetting for planting delays or whatever they may want to look at.
Right. And planting pace for this week was ahead of the 5-year average. And really, we don't worry about this until at least you flip the calendar to May, right?
I would think so. It'd even get to mid-May before we get too
Yeah.
excited at that point.
No, you are right about that. What about the fact that we're ramping up into not only option expiration this week, but first notice day coming up next week? How do you think the market's going to handle that?
Good question. How many times don't we sell off into the end of the month? And would I be surprised to see that? No. And that would be the test if we do. Do we hold those previous lows? How far down do we come? Is it 50% of what we came up or more than that? And if we can hold at decent levels, I think it might get a few more people excited, one about getting out of shorts, and maybe a few other ones that want to protect some feed needs of coming in and protecting some of that, whether that be futures or cash.
Yeah. It seems like we've had a little bit more of a risk on mentality in the markets the last couple of days. Now, whether we can keep that going or not is in question. But has that also helped with some of the buying that we had seen?
I think attitude has been bad for a long time in the grain markets, and that kind of news changes it, and it feels a little bit more like we're getting away from the totally negative stuff and saying, there could be some problems, maybe demand's going to pick up, whatever the case may be. But yes, I think it was definitely helpful.
Yeah. So we are mixed in the cattle market this morning. Feeders have been kind of outperforming the live cattle futures yesterday and maybe even to start off today. Let's talk about kind of what's driving that market and why we set back yesterday. Are we just up into some chart resistance in live cattle, or were there some fundamental headlines that drove that?
I think it's more of the technical side. You and I discussed earlier on Tuesday morning, excuse me, around 10 o'clock, you had some news wire stories come out that Colombia was not going to import any beef from states that had avian flu. There was some stories out there talking about how that U.S. beef production is above last year's pace, even though we got less numbers. In those two, I think could have been some fundamental things. And once you get going and turn that market, if people are friendly like they were, there isn't a lot of stops below the market, or buys below the market, I should say. So you run into some stop loss orders, and the market goes till it runs out of those. And that's what it looked like we did on Tuesday.
Yeah. And as we speak, I've even seen feeders are starting to dip a little bit into the red here. So
Yes.
maybe the run is maybe we'll take a breather here today. We'll see. We're still waiting for cash trade news. We've had 4 down weeks in the Fed market. Do you think we can start turning that around or not?
We're getting to the point. Could we go another month or 6 weeks before we do? Yes. I would think we get close. And I think the biggest thing in there the last couple of weeks, especially, is what the box beef price has done, backing off in there. And we need to keep that firm, I believe. And we are getting into May, which is supposed to be the best demand month for beef. And if it does, hopefully that turns around. We get it further away from that $300 level in the choice.
No, that's a good point you make. Hog market, we've had, boy, a really nice chart breakout here the last few days. Do you think we're going to go back and retest the contract highs here?
I think it's a possibility, and I do think we need to do it in the next few days. If we don't, you're probably going to pull this thing back, and some guys take some money that bought the last few days. But they do have some lighter numbers coming at them. But the real question is, how far can that go? And pork prices are definitely much cheaper than beef. And when people go to pork, are they going to go to poultry or something different?
Yeah. And of course, we've been on both sides of studying the hogs already this morning, but boy, it's really been an interesting thing to watch from a technical perspective. Do you think, though, do the seasonal tendencies for higher cash and cutouts, does that kind of provide a little bit of a floor here, even if we get a setback, Vince?
It should, I would guess. Typically you're looking at that June, July time frame has put in annual highs. We know that some of those don't always work, but as we've turned this market around, I would think we should be in good shape to try to think we could do that.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Vince Boddicker, Farmers Trading Company, and that is Markets Now.